This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.
Five years after its launch, Shovel Knight, the gift that keeps on giving, comes to a close. I was incredibly impressed with its maiden voyage, now called Shovel of Hope, in 2014. The expansions to that story, Plague of Shadows and Spectre of Torment, were each impressive in different ways. This week sees the release of Shovel Knight's final two addendums, King of Cards and the multiplayer brawler Shovel Showdown. This review will only cover the former, but I can't really do justice to the latter without experiencing it in a multiplayer context as it was meant to be played. That review will come soon. In King of Cards, you take control of, surprise surprise, King Knight, as he goes on a journey to be the best Joustus player that ever was. To do so, he must travel across the realm, defeating the three Joustus judges and building up his Joustus deck by winning matches in pubs during his quest. While previous Shovel Knight campaigns featured relatively long, Mega Man-esque levels which ended with a boss fight, King Knight's campaign features a map filled with bite-sized stages which often only contain a single checkpoint. Despite their short length, many of these stages can be quite challenging, as several include alternate exits that are tougher to get to. In between these stages, King Knight can visit mini-stages, which will teach him new moves, or incorporate a new heirloom, or sub-weapon. There are treasure rooms and optional boss fights too. He can visit his home base, a giant airship where he and his increasing number of companions stay. The map also includes pubs, where Joustus is played. As with previous Shovel Knight characters, King Knight has a unique moveset based on dashing forward, a bit like Wario. If he dashes into a character or a wall, King Knight will bounce up and twirl back down. If he hits another enemy or certain objects with this twirl, he will bounce back up, and can then do another dash forward and repeat the whole process. Rolling involves double tapping the attack button, which produces a forward tackle without the bounce and twirl. I found King Knight's moveset harder to get used to than Spectre Knight, but easier than Plague Knight. The short stages and overall lack of boss fights make King of Cards feel like a series of obstacle courses, which I appreciated as an interesting change to the established formula. While most stages take place in established Order of No Quarter themed tile sets, there are some new places, such as Triple Pond, that offer their own hazards. King Knight makes use of several heirlooms, sub-weapons, that I found myself making use of more often than I did in other Shovel Knight campaigns. Not because King Knight's default attack is weak, but because the obstacles he's faced with force you to think creatively, and Yacht Club has done an excellent job of crafting stages to make use of specific heirlooms. Joustus, the card game introduced in this campaign, is not something I'm crazy about. It's less a card game than a strategy game, and involves laying and pushing cards onto gemstones on a grid. A typical grid is 2x2 or 3x3, and each side will have 2 or 3 spaces on the outside for pushing cards into. Your deck consists of 16 cards that have pictures of various Shovel Knight characters with one or more arrows along the borders. For example, a card with a slime has an arrow pointing down. The arrow means that another card with an arrow in the opposite direction cannot push the slime in that direction. Up cancels down. It can still shove the slime card left, right, or down as long as it has an arrow in that direction. It's complicated quickly. The point is to strategically lay your cards down so that you can push your own cards onto gem spaces, because you can't lay a card directly onto a gem, but also pushing your opponent's cards away from the gems and or blocking your opponent from pushing your cards away. The game ends when the central tiles are filled or no other moves are available. I find the base game challenging enough, but Joustus constantly adds wrinkles to the formula, like cards with double arrows, bomb arrows, or opponents with unique abilities. Damn you, Black Knight. Some Joustus clubs utilize strange boards. The one in Mole Knight's area includes large boulders blocking tile spaces which can be destroyed with bomb arrow cards. The winner of a round gets to take one of his opponent's cards for each gem he took, so you can either win or lose between 1 and 3 cards. While I initially felt this was a very harsh punishment, goodbye forever good cards, I was relieved to find that your taken cards can be rebought on the airship between stages. Thankfully, Joustus does seem to be largely optional, although skipping it will rob you of some prizes. Joustus aside, I do have one beef with King of Cards. While level design is generally excellent, the difficulty ramps up significantly towards the back half of the game. This normally wouldn't bother me, but I must confess to still not being 100% used to King Knight's movement patterns. His speed, spacing, and stringing tackle bounce combos together competently is something my brain just can't grasp. It's a more complicated standard moveset than Shovel Knight or Spectre Knight. While I could fall into rhythm with both of those characters and seamlessly move through a stage, I have trouble doing so with King Knight, even several hours in. I wonder if the game's shorter stages are a subtle acknowledgement of this difference. Oddly enough though, I find that the more standard boss fights against others in the order of no quarter are quite fun, and King Knight's dash and twirl are excellent tools there. Despite my misgivings with our royal protagonist's moves, King of Cards is an excellent cap on what's become a downright amazing collection of games. Players who already own Treasure Trove get this one for free, and if you've ever been on the fence about buying it, I really can't recommend it highly enough. And keep your eyes out for our review of the multiplayer component, Shovel Showdown, before too long.
This video was made possible by our generous supporters on Patreon. Did you know that Nintendo World Report is funded directly by fans like you? When you support Nintendo World Report on Patreon, you get immediate access to multiple exclusive podcasts every month, exclusive Discord channels, an early look at select content, and more, all for as little as $1 a month. Check out patreon.com/NWR for all the details.